5 years passed since Ambassador Miller's warnings were dismissed by the Galactic Council. Life continued as usual across Council space, with trade routes flourishing and scientific missions exploring the outer reaches of known territory. The first sign of trouble came when Research Outpost Zeta-12 in the Beta Cygni sector went silent. Likely equipment failure, Councillor Thrazak suggested during the emergency meeting. These remote stations often experience communication difficulties. The Council dispatched a standard investigation team aboard the science vessel Harmony. 2 days later, the Harmony also went silent. Voxtala, now in her 7th term as chairperson, frowned at the report. Send a security detail. Perhaps local raiders have become bold. Within a week, 3 more outposts along the border regions stopped transmitting. Then a military patrol disappeared. The pattern of silence spread inward from the exact regions Miller had marked red in his presentation years earlier. In the Council's central monitoring station, a young technician named Alec noticed something unusual. Chairperson, we're detecting unknown energy signatures moving through the Ptolemy sector. Voxtala peered at the readings. Configuration. Nothing in our database matches exactly, but Alec hesitated. They share characteristics with the unverified data that the humans submitted 5 years ago. The chamber fell silent. Councillor Thrazak scoffed, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Coincidence. The humans know nothing of. His words were cut short as emergency signals flooded the communication channels. The border colony of New Anthoria had gone dark, except for a single transmission showing massive biomechanical ships descending from orbit. The footage ended with screams. "Those ships," whispered Voxtala. "They match Miller's descriptions perfectly." Within days, the full council convened an emergency session. The situation had deteriorated rapidly, with 17 systems now silent. Military vessels sent to investigate failed to return. "Our conventional weapons seem ineffective," reported Admiral Xandar. "The few ships that managed to transmit battle data showed our energy weapons being absorbed by their hull material." Thrazak, uncharacteristically subdued, addressed the council. Perhaps we should consider consulting the humans." "The same humans you mocked as paranoid children?" asked Councillor Rill of the Praxis Collective. "Yes," Thrazak admitted, his scales darkening with embarrassment. "Their warnings now appear prophetic." Voxtala nodded gravely. "Send a diplomatic vessel to Earth immediately. Request their knowledge and assistance." On Earth, President Olivia Patterson received the Council's message in the White House Situation Room. General Reeves stood beside her, along with the now-retired Ambassador Miller. "They're requesting our help," Patterson said, looking up from the transmission. "After 5 years of treating us like ignorant newcomers." Miller's expression remained neutral. "The Council is proud, Madam President. For them to ask for help means the situation is dire." General Reeves activated the room's display, showing the status of Project Aegis. "We're ready. The fleet is complete, crews are trained, and our intelligence on the Vorith, as we've designated them, has been continuously updated from our stealth observation posts." "You kept monitoring even after the Council dismissed our warnings?" Miller asked. Reeves nodded. "We never stopped. While the Council ignored the threat, we studied it. We know their movement patterns, their ship configurations, even some biological details from recovered samples." President Patterson studied the Fleet Readiness Report. Earth had spent 5 years preparing for a threat the Council had laughed away. Now that same Council was begging for help. "Send word to the Council," Patterson decided. "Earth will assist, but on our terms. We'll need full tactical authority." Miller allowed himself a small smile. "They won't like that." "They don't have to like it," Reeves replied. "They just have to survive it. And right now, we're their best hope for that." As the Council's diplomatic vessel approached Earth, they had no idea that humanity wasn't just ready to help. They had been preparing for this moment since the day the Council left. The Council's diplomatic vessel Celestial Messenger entered Earth orbit under escort from 2 human military ships. Even from space, the visitors could see evidence of Earth's preparation, orbital defense platforms and shipyards that hadn't existed 5 years ago. President Patterson stood tall in the White House's Grand Hall as the alien delegation was escorted in. Ambassador Miller stood at her right side, with General Reeves and Admiral Paul Duncan flanking them. The contrast between the diplomatic setting and the military presence wasn't subtle. Counselor Thrazak led the alien delegation, his usually confident posture now stiff with tension. Behind him came 3 military advisors and Voxtala's personal representative. President Patterson. Thrazak began. The Galactic Council extends gratitude for receiving our delegation in this time of crisis. Patterson nodded coolly. We're glad the Council has finally recognized the threat. Though I understand congratulations are in order, Counselor, you've been promoted to head of defense since we last met. Thrazak's scales flushed slightly. A recent appointment, given the circumstances. How convenient, Miller murmured, just loud enough to be heard. President Patterson gestured to the conference room. Let's discuss how Earth can assist. Inside, Admiral Duncan activated a holographic display showing detailed maps of Council space with the Vorath advance clearly marked. Based on their current advancement rate, Duncan explained, they'll reach the Council's core worlds within 3 months. Thrazak's eyes widened. How do you have such detailed intelligence? General Reeves stepped forward. After our warnings were dismissed, we maintained a network of stealth observation posts throughout the regions we identified as dangerous. We've been studying the Vorath for 5 years. Without Council permission, one of Thrazak's advisors sounded outrage. President Patterson's gaze hardened. Permission? When you were mocking our paranoia, we were preparing to save lives, including yours, apparently. Miller interrupted what was becoming a tense exchange. What matters now is response. The Council has requested our help, and we're prepared to give it. Yes, Thrazak acknowledged, humility evident in his voice. The Council formally requests Earth's assistance and knowledge regarding this threat. Admiral Duncan changed the display to show Battle Group Aegis, Earth's response to the Vorath threat. 27 warships of various classes, designed specifically to counter what they had learned about Vorath technology. This is Battle Group Aegis, Duncan explained, developed based on our observations of Vorath capabilities. Our ships use composite armor that resists the energy-draining properties of Vorath weapons. Our own weapons are calibrated to exploit weaknesses we've identified in their biomechanical systems. Thrazak stared at the fleet specifications in disbelief. You built this in just 5 years. 5 years of focused preparation, while the Council did nothing, Reeves replied. President Patterson leaned forward. We'll deploy Battle Group Aegis immediately, but we have conditions. Our forces maintain full operational autonomy. Commander Susan Rivera will lead the mission with complete tactical authority. Thrazak's advisor started to object, but Thrazak raised a hand to silence him. The Council anticipated such terms. Thrazak admitted, we are prepared to grant operational independence to your forces. There's more, Patterson continued. Ambassador Miller will serve as diplomatic liaison, with full authority to negotiate with any species we encounter. And you, Counselor Thrazak, will accompany the mission personally. Me. Thrazak's composure slipped. I'm not a military officer. Precisely why you should witness what your dismissal of our warnings has wrought, Miller said calmly. The Council should have representation, and who better than the official who most vocally dismissed our concerns? After a moment of tension, Thrazak nodded slowly. I accept this requirement. Excellent. Patterson stood. Battle Group Aegis launches in 48 hours. Admiral Duncan will provide your team with all intelligence we've gathered on the Vorath. As the meeting concluded, Miller approached Thrazak privately. For what it's worth, Counselor, I take no pleasure in being right about this threat. Thrazak looked at the human who had once stood before the Council as a supplicant, now standing as a savior. And I, the Counselor replied quietly, take no pleasure in being so catastrophically wrong. Battle Group Aegis emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Procyon system, the last Council outpost still transmitting distress signals. Commander Susan Rivera stood on the bridge of the flagship Valiant, studying the tactical display as the 27 Earth vessels moved into formation. "Status report," Rivera ordered, her voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. "All ships reporting ready, Commander." Lieutenant Eric Shaw responded from the tactical station, sensors detecting heavy Vorath activity around the third planet. Council outposts still holding, but their shields are at 20%. Rivera nodded. "Deploy as planned. Carriers to holding position. Strike teams prepare for launch." Counselor Thrazak watched from his observer position on the bridge, his expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. The human ships moved with precision he had never witnessed in Council fleets. No wasted movement, no ceremonial formations, only deadly efficiency. "You position your smallest ships at the front?" he asked, unable to contain his surprise. Rivera didn't take her eyes off the display. "Scout-class vessels have enhanced stealth capabilities. They'll map Vorath positions without detection. But Council doctrine states that largest vessels should." "Council doctrine is why we're here, Counselor," Rivera interrupted. "Our formation serves function, not tradition." As they approached the battle zone, the true horror of the Vorath became visible. Massive organic mechanical ships swarmed around the Council outpost, each vessel resembling a grotesque fusion of technology and living tissue. The planet below showed spreading patches of blackness where Vorath ground forces consumed everything in their path. "Vorath haven't detected us yet," Shaw reported. "Scout data incoming." The tactical display updated, revealing the Vorath fleet's precise positions and movement patterns. Rivera studied the information, then made her decision. "Execute Operation Firebreak. All ships, battle stations." What happened next left Thrazak speechless. Instead of engaging directly, the human vessels launched what appeared to be debris and disabled ships toward specific coordinates. The Vorath immediately changed course to investigate, seemingly drawn to the technological components. "They're scavengers," Rivera explained, noting Thrazak's confusion. "They consume technology as well as organic matter. We're setting the table." When half the Vorath fleet had moved to investigate the debris field, Rivera gave her next order. "Spring the trap." The debris suddenly activated, nuclear mines and autonomous weapons that detonated simultaneously. The explosion ripped through the Vorath fleet, destroying nearly a third of their forces in one coordinated strike. "Main force, engage now," Rivera commanded. The human warships surged forward, weapon systems targeting the specific vulnerabilities identified in their years of research. Specialized energy weapons disrupted the Vorath ships' biological components, while armor-piercing projectiles shattered their mechanical systems. Thrazak watched in stunned silence. The Council had considered such tactics barbaric, using nuclear weapons, sacrificing resources as bait, attacking without formal declaration. Yet the effectiveness was undeniable. "The outpost reports Vorath ground forces breaching their inner defenses," Shaw reported. Rivera nodded to her Marine commander. "Colonel Diaz, deploy your teams." 4 assault shuttles broke from the human fleet, diving toward the outpost. Unlike Council rescue operations, these ships were heavily armed and carried soldiers in powered combat armor. "How many troops are you sending?" Thrazak asked. 40, Rivera replied. "Quality over quantity." 40 against thousands. Thrazak's voice rose in alarm. "The Council would send at least 500. Rivera finally turned to face the Counselor. "And how many Council troops have successfully repelled a Vorath ground assault?" Thrazak had no answer. On the surface, Colonel Diaz's Marines moved with brutal efficiency, using tactics no Council military would consider, collapsing structures to trap Vorath forces, using the outpost's reactor as a weapon, and deploying chemical agents that targeted the Vorath's biological components. Within hours, the battle was over. The outpost was secured, the remaining Vorith ships retreating to regroup. First engagement successful, Rivera announced. Casualties minimal. Prepare to pursue. Thrazak stared at the tactical display, at the devastation inflicted by the human forces, and finally understood why the Council should have listened 5 years ago. "You've studied them all this time," he said quietly. Rivera nodded. "While you laughed, we learned. While you dismissed, we designed. And now, Counselor, we fight." News of humanity's victory at Procyon spread quickly through Council space, while official channels maintained calm. The public feeds buzzed with equal parts hope and disbelief. Most species had already begun evacuation preparations, expecting the Vorith to consume their worlds as they had so many others. Lieutenant Frank Harris checked his tactical gear one final time as the stealth insertion pod prepared to launch. Around him, 11 other Special Forces operators did the same, each wearing the matte black armor of Earth's elite Ghost Squadron. "Mission parameters unchanged," Harris reminded his team. "We go in silent, locate the control node, extract data, then call in the strike. No heroics." The pod launched from the Valiant, its stealth systems making it virtually invisible against the backdrop of space. Their destination: a massive Vorith command vessel holding position at the edge of the Altair system. Back on the Valiant, scientists Catherine Boyd and Peter Gonzalez worked frantically in the mobile research lab. Surrounded by samples collected from previous engagements, they searched for any edge against the advancing Vorith forces. "I'm seeing something interesting in these tissue samples," Boyd said, adjusting her microscope. "The cellular structure changes when exposed to certain radiation frequencies." Gonzalez moved to her station, examining the data. "It's almost like an allergic reaction. The cells break down under sustained exposure." "Commander Rivera needs to see this," Boyd said, compiling their findings. On the bridge, Rivera studied reports from across the front. Despite humanity's initial victory, the Vorith were adapting. 3 Council worlds had fallen in the past week alone, with millions of civilians unaccounted for. "They're learning from each encounter," she told Thrazak, who had become an unexpectedly valuable advisor. "Each Vorith ship we destroy seems to transmit data to the others before it falls." "A hive mind," Thrazak suggested. The Council suspected as much but could never confirm it. Rivera nodded, "Which is why Harris's mission is crucial. If they're connected, there must be a central coordination point." Boyd and Gonzalez arrived on the bridge, their excitement evident despite their exhaustion. "Commander, we found something," Boyd announced, displaying their findings on the main screen. "The Vorith show extreme sensitivity to Type C radiation. It disrupts their neural pathways and prevents their biological components from integrating with their technology." "Type C radiation." Thrazak looked confused. "That's highly dangerous to most Council species, but not to humans," Gonzalez explained. "We can tolerate exposure levels that would be lethal to the Vorith or your people." Rivera immediately saw the tactical advantage. "So we could deploy radiation barriers as both shields and weapons." "Exactly," Boyd confirmed. "And the Vorith would have to choose between advancing through the radiation or retreating." The tactical implications were revolutionary. Rivera began drafting orders to modify all ships in the battle group when Lieutenant Shaw interrupted. "Commander, incoming transmission from Ghost Squadron. They've successfully infiltrated the command vessel." The main screen switched to Harris's helmet camera, showing bizarre organic mechanical structures pulsing with bioluminescent energy. His team moved carefully through corridors that seemed alive, placing data extraction devices on central nodes. "We've located what appears to be their central coordination chamber," Harris reported quietly. "It's unlike anything we've seen. The ships aren't just vessels, they're extensions of a central organism." His camera panned to show an enormous chamber where thousands of tendrils connected to a pulsating core. The core itself contained what looked like a brain-like structure the size of a small house. "Can you extract data from it?" Rivera asked. "Already in progress," Harris confirmed. But there's more. We've identified navigation charts. The Vorath aren't just random scavengers. They are following a specific expansion pattern. And Commander, they have targets marked throughout Council space. This is a coordinated invasion. Rivera exchanged glances with Thrazak, whose scales had paled to a light gray. Complete your mission and return immediately, Rivera ordered. We're implementing a new strategy based on Dr. Boyd's findings. As Ghost Squadron prepared their extraction, Rivera turned to her science team. I want every ship equipped with Type C radiation projectors within 24 hours. We're going to push them back. Thrazak watched the humans work with newfound respect. The Council had spent generations avoiding conflict, believing diplomacy would solve all problems. These humans, these newcomers, had prepared for war because they understood something the Council had forgotten. Sometimes survival requires fighting. Proxima Station hung in space like a wounded animal, its outer rings damaged and emergency power flickering throughout its sections. Once the pride of Council engineering, the massive station now served as humanity's forward base in the desperate fight against the Vorath. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching as the largest Vorath fleet yet assembled dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Her ship, along with 15 others, formed a protective barrier around Proxima Station and its 10,000 refugees. They outnumber us 5-1, her executive officer reported grimly. Morgan nodded. As expected, all ships initiate radiation shield protocols. Prepare for Operation Sunburst. Behind her, Counselor Thrazak watched with growing respect. In the 2 months since humans had joined the fight, they had transformed retreat into resistance. The Council races were slowly learning to fight alongside their human allies, adopting tactics that broke thousands of years of military doctrine. Your people will be remembered for this stand, Thrazak said quietly, whatever the outcome. Morgan didn't respond immediately, her attention focused on the tactical display. The Vorath vessels spread into their attack formation, a pattern human analysts had named the Maw for its resemblance to closing jaws. We're not here to be remembered, Counselor, she finally replied. We're here to win. The Vorath attack began with a wave of smaller biomechanical ships, probing for weaknesses. Human and allied vessels activated their newly installed Type C radiation projectors, creating an invisible barrier that caused the leading Vorath ships to shudder and recoil as their organic components began to break down. They're adapting, Morgan noted as the second wave of Vorath ships deployed protective shields, just as Commander Rivera predicted. She opened a channel to all human ships. Initiate Phase 2. Draw them to grid points and hold position. The human vessels executed a series of seemingly random maneuvers, but Thrazak recognized the pattern from briefings. They were luring Vorath ships into predetermined kill zones. For an hour, the battle raged. 3 human ships were lost, their crews evacuated to Proxima Station before their reactors were remotely overloaded and detonated among clusters of Vorath vessels. The station's defenses held, but sensors showed the main Vorath mothership, a massive organism vessel hybrid nearly 5 kilometers long, holding back from the fight. They're conserving their command ship, Morgan observed. Standard protocological response, protecting the neural core. She studied the tactical display, watching the mothership's position. A plan formed in her mind, one that went against everything in both human and Council military doctrine. XO, transfer command codes to Commander Rivera, Morgan ordered. Her executive officer looked up sharply. Captain, you heard me. And prepare the radiation bomb. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. Thrazak stepped forward. Captain Morgan, such an action would save the station and possibly turn the tide, she finished for him. The mothership is controlling this entire attack force. If it falls, the rest will be disorganized. Morgan moved to the weapons station, entering her authorization code to unlock the experimental device, a bomb designed to release a concentrated burst of Type C radiation powerful enough to neutralize Vorath biological systems across an entire fleet. The radiation levels would be fatal to the delivering ship's crew, Thrazek said, his voice hollow. Morgan met his gaze. I know. Minutes later, the Defiant broke formation, accelerating directly toward the Vorath mothership. The enemy vessels, seemingly sensing the threat, moved to intercept, but the Defiant's enhanced engines pushed it through their lines. On the station's command center, Commander Rivera watched the Defiant's approach with a grim expression. All ships, prepare to exploit the opening Captain Morgan is about to create. The Defiant took hit after hit, its shields failing as it closed on the mothership. Morgan's voice came through the command channel one final time. For Earth and the Council, remember why we fight. The explosion was unlike anything Thrazek had ever witnessed. Not a fireball, but a pulse of invisible energy that spread outward from the point of impact. The Vorath mothership convulsed as its biological systems failed catastrophically. Throughout the battlefield, Vorath vessels suddenly drifted, their controlling intelligence severed. All ships, attack now, Rivera ordered. As human and allied vessels surged forward to claim victory, Thrazek stood in silence, finally understanding the difference between his people and these humans. The Council had built its civilization on avoiding sacrifice. Humans embraced it when necessary. The Battle of Proxima Station would later be recognized as the turning point in the war. The sacrifice of Captain Morgan and her crew, a decision no Council commander would have made, had broken the Vorath advance. 1 year after the Battle of Proxima Station, the Grand Council chamber looked markedly different. Military officers now occupied seats once reserved for bureaucrats and diplomats. Defense reports had replaced trade agreements as the priority on meeting agendas. And most noticeably, humans sat among the senior council representatives. Admiral Susan Rivera, promoted after Commander Morgan's sacrifice, stood at the central podium. Her dress uniform bore the combined insignia of Earth and the Galactic Council, a merger unimaginable just 18 months earlier. The Vorath threat has been contained but not eliminated, Rivera reported, gesturing to the galactic map behind her. We've pushed them back to their origin point in the Perseus Arm and established a permanent quarantine zone. The radiation barrier is holding, and our monitoring stations detect no attempts to breach it in the past 60 days. Chairperson Voxdalen nodded gravely. And your assessment of future threats, Admiral? There will always be more threats, Rivera answered plainly. The galaxy is not the peaceful haven the Council believed it to be. The Vorath were simply the first to reach us. From his new position as liaison for interspecies defense, Thrazek studied the human admiral. Once he would have found such bluntness offensive. Now he recognized it as the clarity that had saved countless billions of lives. The Joint Human Council fleet remains on high alert, Rivera continued. We've established early warning outposts based on Ambassador Miller's original threat map. Additionally, we've begun exploring regions previously deemed too dangerous by Council standards. Several Council members shifted uncomfortably at this. Exploration had once been careful and methodical. The humans had introduced a more aggressive approach, identifying threats before they could develop. Ambassador Miller, now elevated to Earth's senior representative, spoke next. The treaty modifications have been finalized. Earth will oversee galactic defense protocols while the Council maintains its traditional role in diplomatic and cultural affairs. Our military academies are now accepting cadets from all Council species, with special focus on tactical innovation and rapid response training. Old Counselor Rill from the Praxis Collective raised a gnarled hand. I remember when this chamber first mocked human warnings. Now we reshape our civilization around their military doctrine. Have we surrendered our identity in exchange for security? A murmur ran through the chamber. It was a question many had thought but few had dared voice. To everyone's surprise, it was Thrazek who answered. He rose from his seat, bearing the scars from his time aboard human vessels during the war. I once shared such concerns, he began. I feared the humans would dominate us with their aggressive nature and military focus. I was wrong in ways I could never have imagined. The chamber fell silent as Thrazek continued. Humans didn't save us because they wanted power. They saved us because they could. Where we saw barbarians, I now see guardians. Where we expected conquerors, I found protectors. They understood something we had forgotten over millennia of peace, that survival sometimes requires strength, and wisdom sometimes requires action. He turned to face Rivera and Miller directly. The humans didn't change our identity. They reminded us of what we once were, before comfort made us complacent. And they showed us what we must become again. Chairperson Voxtala nodded slowly. Well said, Lees and Thrazak. Let the record show that the Council formally acknowledges its error in dismissing Earth's warnings, and let us further acknowledge our gratitude for humanity's assistance despite our dismissal. Rivera's expression remained professional, but Miller allowed himself a small smile, not of triumph, but of relief. Earth had found its place in the galactic community, not as supplicants, but as equals, perhaps even as leaders. As the meeting concluded, Rivera and Miller walked together through the grand corridors of the Council station, now bustling with human and alien military personnel training together. They're learning quickly, Rivera observed, watching a group of cadets from 5 different species running combat drills. Miller nodded. Fear is a powerful motivator. The Council feared extinction, now they fear irrelevance. And what do we fear? Rivera asked quietly. Miller paused, looking out at the stars visible through the station's enormous viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond the Voreth quarantine zone, other threats waited to be discovered. We fear complacency, he finally answered, because we remember when the Council laughed at our warnings, and we know the cost of their laughter. Rivera nodded. Then we'll make sure no one forgets. Together, they continued toward the Defense Council chamber, where plans for the next exploration mission awaited approval. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity stood ready to protect it, whether it wanted protection or not.